Welcome to Big Body, Bigger Mouth, the show where you get to hear me, Kelsey Belcher, your host, yap about all different kinds of things, such as society and pop culture, and everything else in between. I'll be sharing embarrassing stories. They will make you laugh and cry, and, well, consider whether or not I should be allowed on the internet. Just pretend we're on FaceTime with a bestie. You know, your bestie says something crazy sometime, but you can either support it, love it, or be like, girl, why did you say that? I'm not a professional podcaster. I will make mistakes, but if there was a division to go D1 in talking, yeah, I'd be your girl. I could talk for hours on end, and I thought, why not make a career out of it? So for the first episode, I wanted you to get to know me, who's large and in charge. If you're listening just on audio, just know I'm more like Margot Robbie, but sexier. And if you're on the video, you will realize I look more like Melissa McCarthy. But that's, we're gonna rock with it anyway. So, I asked on my Instagram, kel.b2002, for you guys to ask me questions to get to know me. Some are funny, some are cute, some are just, I really don't want to answer, but you know what, for the plot, I will. So, let's get started. The first question was very compelling by a gentleman friend of mine, and he asked, tits or ass? Okay. I'm gonna go with ass, I guess, because, alright, I don't know what I was supposed to say to that. The same, gentleman also just said, I like men. Okay, sure, if that's a question, yes. Unfortunately, I do. Our second question was, I can't say his real name, so we're gonna call him George. And basically, it was, who was George? George was a man who we would have a few cocktails, he would spend the night, and go home the next day. But what's different about George is the fact that I got a text one day after me and George's first date from his girlfriend, pretty much telling me that I am terrible and crazy and to leave him alone. He told me they broke up, they did not, and we continued seeing each other, and that is the story of George. So, not too interesting, but that's who George was. I hope he doesn't listen to this and realize his name is not George. And the real story comes out. Craziest red flags I've seen in men. I think, the obvious ones, if they're, around the age of, 26, 27, and they aren't nice to waiters and waitresses, and they're not nice to, people in the public, that's a problem. You were raised to have etiquette, right? I don't understand. If they project all their problems onto you and expect you to deal with it, and then when you talk to them about your problems and they go, I don't know, and they don't give you any feedback, that's disgusting, and that's a red flag. This one's more of a niche red flag, but if they drink Modelo's, I can't tell you why it's Modelo's, it's just Modelo's. Anytime I've seen a man drink one, he is honestly the worst guy I've ever met in my life. If he can stand to drink a Four Loko and have multiple Four Lokos in that night, he's never leaving his mom's house. He is an alcoholic and will never learn from his mistakes. Never date a guy who drinks Four Lokos on the regular. I swear to God, he will ruin your life. Moving on. Most outrageous dating story of my life. Now, I need to think about this one because I've been on more terrible dates than good dates. But probably... Okay, so I had met a young gentleman on Tinder, and he was like, hey, let's hang out tonight. And I was like, okay, sure. So it was around 2020, but so probably not a safe era to be meeting somebody. But I had work that day, and at the time I worked at a daycare where we needed to wear like jeans and a sweatshirt or like with the logo on it, and that was just like, I don't know, the attire. And I remember sending him a Snapchat that morning and was like, oh, excited for our date. He's like, are you wearing that? That should have been my first red flag, but I was like, oh no, I can like go home and change. He's like, yeah, do that, wear something cuter. Already this guy's a piece of shit. But I for some reason was like, maybe he's just crappy, it's early. So I tell him to meet at a local ice cream shop in the town that I live in, and he lived like 2 towns over, and he was like, okay, sure. So we meet up there. I drive there, he drives there. He gets out of the car, he hugs me, and then squeezes my ass cheeks like his plane is going down. And I thought to myself, wow, this is not going to go the direction I want it to, I think. So he's like, let's go get dinner. And I'm like, okay, where at? He's like, I don't know, maybe Panda Express. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's go to Panda Express. So we're driving, and there's like a COVID relief kind of center, and he decides to say, I'm gonna drop you up there and hope you get COVID. And I thought, wow, that's a really crazy thing to say, buddy. And so he proceeds to talk about how our entire town is just a bunch of hicks, and how like his area is so much better, and just all these things. And mind you, he catfished me. His picture, he looked a lot cuter, and when I showed up, I was like, is this the same guy? So to catfish me and still have an ego is fucking crazy. So anyway, we're driving, and for some reason, he tries to reach down my pants in the middle of driving and almost crashes into the median to get to the Panda Express. So I'm like, wow, I'm gonna lose my life and be seen with this loser. Great. Can't wait for that. Yes, don't date rednecks. That is definitely a takeaway from this episode. So then we go get the food, and I tell him, I don't really want to eat in front of you, okay? I don't feel comfortable with that. And he's like, just eat. And I go, no, I don't want to. So I'm like, I just want a lemonade. So he buys me a large lemonade, and he scarfs down this orange chicken like a dog hasn't gotten eaten in 52 days. He doesn't even take a breath. He's just like the whole time. So after he eats this orange chicken, he proceeds to violently make out with me in a bank parking lot. And I thought, this is terrible. This is awful. How could it get any worse? So I keep saying, I don't want this to happen, but I didn't want to be a Debbie Downer, okay? So we start driving around again, and he goes, I got a gun in the car. And I go, it's really interesting. And he goes, yeah, but I'm not going to show you because you're a narc. And I go, okay, great. So then he's like, honestly, you owe me more Panda Express. And then we went through the Panda Express parking lot, and he took my card, and he bought himself more Panda, and then dropped me off and blocked me. So that was probably the worst dating experience I've ever had. Which, there are so many more, and don't worry, when we do the Valentine's Day episode, you're gonna get all the crazy stories. But, best and worst hookup experience. So, if you're under the age of 18 listening to this part, I'm just going to have you skip ahead maybe 15 minutes. But we're all adults here, right? I'm 21. So, my best hookup story is, I'm just going to go with this guy I'm seeing right now. It's a good time. That's all we need to know about that. Probably the worst takes place back when I was 18. And this guy, he was a D1 wrestler. He was going D1 in wrestling, and he was really cute, but you could kind of tell every time we were together that he did not want to be seen with a hefty woman, which is terrible. And I continued to see him because I kind of thought he was sexy, and we kind of had, good endeavors. So I was like, whatever. So he came to my house. He picked me up in a truck the first time, and we went driving, and he's like, oh, like, where do you want to do this? And I'm like, I don't know. So he's like, all right, pulls off into a dirt pit on the side of the road. We make out. He drops me off. A few weeks later, he hits me up again, and he's like, hey, like, I low-key want to see you again. Like, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, oh, I'm free. So he picks me up now in a minivan. And I'm like, where the hell did this guy get a minivan on deck? And he's like, oh, like, my mom's got, like, a bunch of them. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we pull out in front of my neighborhood, and the neighborhood I used to live in had, like, a cul-de-sac that was, like, kind of, like, there was, like a garden in it, and there was, like, parking spots, but, like, the way that you parked, there was, like, trees, like, covering the car. So I was like, if I could just park there. So, you know, we had our time, whatever. We had our moment, and I'm, like, naked in the back seat, and I'm going to get dressed, and he, like, gets dressed really quick, hops up to the driver's seat, and I, like, go to open the door, still, like, kind of, like, half naked. I'm, like, trying to, like, put on my sweatshirt as I'm, like, opening the door, and he goes, oh, no, you're good back there. And all the seats are down in this minivan, and I'm like, okay, all right. He punches it at 50 miles an hour. The car door swings open on the main road, and I'm gripping half naked down onto, like, the chair, being like, I am going to be roadkill. What is going on? He, without question, just puts a hand on the steering wheel and goes, you're good. And then I never saw him again. So that was probably the worst. My favorite color, I'm a pink girl. I know I'm wearing green right now, but I love pink, hot pink, bubblegum pink, fuchsia. I am a pink girl at heart. Oh, celebrity crush, childhood celebrity crush. Now, overall, who's my favorite celebrity crush and my celebrity crush of the month. When I was a kid, I always kind of found just, like, some cute guy that was, like, on TV and was like, oh, he's cute. But probably James Maslow from Big Time Rush. I literally thought I was going to marry that man one day. I was like, I am so certain that I will marry him. He is now, like, 45. 45 is a stretch, but he's much older than me, and I was 8 years old, and he was, like, 20, and I was like, oh, yeah, I got this in the bag. Middle school and forever, my crush will always be Luke Hemmings from 5 Seconds to Summer. I have his name tattooed on my arm, his, like, autograph, and I will marry that man. I'm not in denial. He is the love of my life. Celebrity crush of the month, I would say, with all this hype around the movie Saltburn, I gotta say Jacob Elordi. He is just all 6'4" of just gorgeous deliciousness, and he is just stunning. He is honestly breathtaking. When I see edits on TikTok of him shirtless with that eyebrow piercing, a part of my soul is just, like, honestly lifted into the sky. He is so fine. I cannot even fathom anyone cuter than that, to be honest. Tell me an embarrassing story from high school. So I graduated high school in about 2020, which was a crazy time with COVID. And I think this story took place, like, maybe freshman, sophomore year. But with, like, my mental health, I also had a pass to go to the nurse, because I was, like, close with her, and I, like, had anxiety about, like, using the bathroom, like, the public bathroom in the school, so I could use the bathroom in the nurse's office. So I don't remember what lunch was that day, but I believe it was, like, taco day, something that was diarrhea worthy, pretty much. And I was in class, and I was like, I have to go to the bathroom right now. Like, if I do not go to the bathroom, there will be a cleanup in my business class. So I tell my teacher, like, can I go to the nurse? And he's like, why the nurse? And I'm like, lady problems, and I book it to the nurse. So I walk in the nurse, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna use the bathroom. And every sexy football player that was a senior that year was standing. My producer's laughing right now. was standing all just like getting ice for something, and I'm like, fancy meeting you guys here. So I'm like, oh, like, is your bathroom open? And she's like, yeah. Like, little Billy just puked in there, but, you know, whatever. So I walk in the back, and this kid is bent over, like, over a bucket. And I'm like, well, too bad, I got a shit. So I go to the bathroom, and for some reason I thought that the walls were, like, soundproof. And they weren't. And my dad had, like, called me, and he's like, oh, how's school? And I'm like, honestly, having a real blast off in the nurse's bathroom right now. And I'm talking so loud, and it literally sounds like it's the 4th of July coming out of this bathroom because of the amount of shit that is coming out of my body. So that's all happening. I walk out, this kid starts puking in the bucket. In the bucket. And then I walk out, and all the football players just looked at me, said nothing, I said nothing, and walked out. Then I go to tell my friend the story, slip, and fall into a wall. So, you know, that's that's what happened. If that doesn't give you any sort of indication of who I am as a woman, I'm not sure what will. Okay? I'm kind of more of like a trucker mouth meets like cutesy, fun, lovey, whatever, stuffed animal having woman. Also will tell you like where the bear shits in the buckwheat. Like I'm just all kind of sorts of things, you know, just like a jack of all trades, if you will. My next question is, tell me about your childhood. Well, I'm an only child, and I'm a girl, so I pretty much had it made from the start. You know, I'm the youngest of my mom's side, in the middle of my dad's side. I pretty much, honestly, was very lucky growing up. My middle school years is kind of when things took a turn. I was like diagnosed with more mental health stuff, and that's when things like kind of started not being great, and I kind of realized that the world is not all rainbows and sunshine, and you essentially don't get everything you want. Yeah, my parents like divorced, and that's really just kind of what tipped the iceberg. But I really did have a very lucky childhood, you know, it was very loving. I did grow up fat though. So growing up fat was just really something. Like, you either get it or you don't. Like, if you grow up skinny and then you're like chunky now, you're like, oh, I need to lose weight. But like growing up chunky and continuing to be chunky, you really realize who your real friends are, who guys who really do like you and not just, you know, want to be seen with you in the dark. Like, growing up fat is just, it's really an experience all in itself. You really can't describe it unless you've been through it, but it really shows you who the fucking assholes are in the world. That, you know, but then you learn to love yourself. You know, I learned to love myself at a really young age, because I was like, you know what, if no one else is gonna like appreciate my body the way it is, like, you have to. And I really gained this like self-confidence that I was like, you know what, I am a bad bitch regardless of my size. Who cares if I'm 3 something? I know I have a better personality than my like little 1 something friend. And it's not about comparing, but it's just about being who you are and comfortable in your own skin regardless of what society says and what everyone else is saying. And it's just, if you look in the mirror and you're like, you are a badass, you will forever think that. It's, you have to be secure in yourself and in you. And growing up as a kid, I realized, like, you know what, who cares? Literally just be yourself. What did I want to be when I grew up? When I was like in kindergarten, I remember vividly doing a little activity where we had to pick what we wanted to be, and I said a cheerleader. Which in one sense came kind of true. I was the manager at my high school for cheerleading, and I did cheerleading all 4 years of high school, and I loved it. But then in middle school, I actually wanted to work in entertainment and content creation, and we had a dance where like awards were given out for our 8th grade year, and I got the award to be most likely internet famous. So hopefully that comes true. And that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. I wanted to work in the media and do videos and podcasting, and I thought, if I could talk forever and get paid for it, sign me the fuck up. That is what I want to do. And then that never really stopped. I always, was looking for social media stuff and just like getting out of my mundane 9-to-5s, because if I have to work in childcare for the rest of my life, I'm going to lose my marbles. I cannot deal with those kids all day, every day anymore. But the next question is, what do I look for in a guy? Honestly, I just want a guy who's very, nice and comforting and caring and empathetic. I cannot do with, a stone cold jag-off guy. I can't do that. But he needs to make me laugh. Not an asshole, exactly. But evidently, I always end up with assholes. I don't know what about me is yes, give me an asshole piece of shit guy. But I really need a guy to make me laugh. If he cannot make me laugh, it cannot work. I cannot carry the relationship on my whole back. I can't do it. I can't be the funniest person forever, even though I might be. I can't. So that's kind of what I look for. I don't look for any physical characteristics, really. I think that my type ranges. I love a good skater boy, love an athlete, love a dad bod type guy. I honestly just love it all. I'm just here for it all. This next person asked, do you have any advice on being in a situationship? Oh boy. I've been in plenty of those. Basically, for the viewers at home listening, if you don't know what a situationship is, it basically is the kind of relationship where there's no labels. You kind of talk, you hook up, you act like you're dating, but you're technically not together. And that is a really kind of toxic situation to be in. And my advice is, run for the hills, girl. It's not worth it. If a guy is not willing to make you a priority and say you are my girlfriend and commit to you, you could easily commit to one of his friends. Remember that. Be a homie hopper. When they go low, go lower. That is what I have to say about that. My hobbies. I love reading those slutty books. I love reading those slutty books. I love shopping, even though I'm so broke it's not even funny. Love getting my nails done, hanging out with the girls. I'm not a big movie person. I'm more of TV and books. And honestly, I just love going to new restaurants and trying new adventures and going and doing new things. But I would say right now, reading is probably my biggest hobby. Who inspired me to start podcasting? Honestly, just growing up and always talking the way I did and sharing stories and experiences. People would always say sorry, they would always say you should have a podcast, you should go on a podcast. And I kind of listened to that and was just okay. And then growing up being a fan of other people and YouTubers and podcasters, I was I want to be just like them. And as soon as I saw Brittany Broski start a podcast, the Broski Report, you guys should check it out, I was I want to podcast. I saw so much of myself in her, and she is purely based on personality, and she just carries the room. Anyone she's in, she just owns it. And I thought, if Brittany can do this podcast, I want to be able to do a podcast. And hopefully one day she'll be on my podcast. That would be crazy. Or I'll be on her podcast. That would be insane. So let's do that. Let's get that happening somehow. Where did the name of your podcast come from? Well, it was also in middle school. Basically, I was on the bus, and my friends were if you had a podcast, what would you call it? And I literally just thought, Big Body, Bigger Mouth. And I've never thought of another name since. There was one other name I was toying with, which is Off My Meds Again. But I really did love Big Body, Bigger Mouth, so that's kind of what we stuck with. What is your advice for someone going through a mental health struggle? Honestly, I think going through a mental health struggle is, you're not alone. Just remember that you're not alone, and that finding your supports is going to be the best thing for you. Find people who make you feel sunshine, who make you feel happy, who make you feel safe. Having a support system is going to make the whole thing 10 times easier to go through, because half of the mental health struggle is sometimes depending on you feel so alone and drained and sad, and you got to be with people who kind of bring you out of that. I would say also, like, look for professional help. I've been going to therapy since I was like 12, and I mean, I'm still crazy, but I'm a little less crazy now. And I know how to manage it, and I know how to kind of get myself out of the funk. And I think definitely going to therapy is something that everybody should do in their life at one point. So that is probably my best advice. And my iPad closed down, so here we go. Describe my aesthetic. I kind of did earlier. I'm very, like, loud and in your face, but I love, like, the bow aesthetic and, like, pretty little princess kind of aesthetic. But then my personality is more just like an unhinged trucker woman, like just like a big beefy farmer. But then my aesthetic is like pretty pink, like Princess Barbie. Like I don't really have an aesthetic. I don't really like just like, I'm not in just one area. I think I'm in all the areas. So I don't really think I have an aesthetic. I think I'm aesthetic free. What has been my favorite part of college so far? Well, I go to community college. I don't go to a big 4-year. I'm too broke for that. And also, I never really got the college experience of, like, you go to class all day and then you come home and then go to a party and black out in the lawn. I was like, I don't understand. Like, I can't keep up with y'all like that. My party phase was when I was 18. I cannot keep up the way that these 21-year-old sorority girls are keeping up. I can't do it. But I would say probably the opportunities you get at a community college. Like, it's a lot smaller and you're competing with a lot less people. And if I didn't go to college, I wouldn't have the experience to podcast now. So I would say that was definitely my favorite part of college. And favorite vape flavor. I do not condone vaping. It is terrible for you, and everybody should quit, but grape soda. It's my favorite flavor regardless. And honestly, that concludes all the questions. You got to know who's large and in charge and kind of get a little tiptoe of what it's like in this podcast. And I hope you guys enjoyed. And leave some comments below. Leave some more questions. I can answer them on the next episode. And thank you for listening. I appreciate it.